Welcome to the Triskele podcast.
We are three druids gathered in a virtual grove
to share our thoughts and our path with you.
Hi, welcome to episode 17 of the Triskele podcast. If you're a new viewer or listener, welcome to the podcast. And if you're a returning listener or viewer, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the well and how that interacts with our practice. But before we get started, let's do introductions. So I am Victoria. My pronouns are she and her.
Hi, I'm Drum. My pronouns are he and him.
And I'm Amber. My pronouns are she and her.
Great. And as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about the well. Now, the last episode, we talked a bit about the fire. And in Andrea Kvein, we have three hallows. And those three hallows are the fire, the well, and the tree. So you will notice a pattern in these three episodes. Today, we're going to talk a bit about the well and what it means to us and how we work that into our practice. So let's start out with, what does the well mean to you?
Well, I'll jump in. For me, the well is, it really is, while we have three hallows, we also have three realms. And so one of the realms that we have is the sea, the sea that stretches out around us. And so for me, the well is a vessel of the sea. It's a vessel of water. So for me, it kind of follows from the realms to the hallows, and then as we'll talk a little further on to the kindreds that are associated with it. But for me, I like to have a water as part of my daily practice. It is not only cleansing, it's a way for anointing. And I think I've talked in the Triskele podcast before that I anoint a stone every morning for my household spirits, and there's a vessel of water right there. It's actually an espresso cup, but it's a well in my mind, and so I use that well to anoint the stone. So it's a vessel and a receptacle as well for offering and work purposes.
So in the last episode, we talked about the sacred fire and how it has a multitude of ways that it can be connected with or used in our rituals. And the well has that same attribute. You know, there's a lot of different roles that it can play in our rituals. It is a connection directly to the ancestors. It's also where offerings are made and purification happens. In the Greek pantheon, there's not a lot of connection directly to wells in our mythology, but there's a lot of ties to water in other ways. And so, you know, you can see that in the different rivers that you find in the underworld and the different roles they play there, you know, whether that's to refresh someone who has passed away or to wipe away the memories from those who have passed, or, you know, all of the many different things that it does. So, I don't know, the well is a diverse thing that carries with it intuition and wisdom and a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for me, the well is that connection to water, which is not as simple as it sounds. I read an article the other day, and it made me think that water comes from somewhere else. That water didn't originate on this planet. That there are some scientific studies currently that are indicating that perhaps, again, this is all speculation, all of the water on the planet actually has come from somewhere else. Whether it was meteors that were hitting the planet, ice that's formed on the planet, other things that are coming onto this planet. And if you think about that, so that connects us to everything else. Right? That connects us to all of the worlds beyond Earth. And then, even within our planet, water is the one thing that constantly recycles. The water that is in this glass was once potentially in a plant or in a sea, and it evaporated up into the clouds, into the skies, into the heavens, and came down as rain into a reservoir that then got converted into my pipes, or maybe it just got filtered out of the sea, who knows, or the river. And now I'm drinking it. the water connects us to everything and everyone on this planet. Everyone consumes water. And because of the cycle of water, because of the scientifically proven cycle of water molecules through our systems, ecological systems, they connect us to everything. And to me, that is the power of water, is that connection. Air has a similar connection, right? Like air of the planet, it's one atmosphere. We're all breathing it. There's a lot of water and air, coincidentally. So it ties us all together. And it really sort of emphasizes that connection to our current and to our past. Because this water has been around for, we don't know how long. As far as our scientists can tell, the water that we are consuming was here in prehistoric times. Sometimes in ice, sometimes in other things. And so you have this ultimate connection to those ancient ancestors through the water you drink. Anyway,
Oh, that's fascinating. I
think
love
water is
that.
fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting because, you know, we think about trees and we think about roots, the roots of trees. And in a way, water is kind of that same kind of root structure that, you know, not only filters from, you know, the ground level of the planet, but moves down, you know, down the well, down past the ancestors, down to the primal waters underneath us. And it is, you know, it has that ubiquity that we find with air, and it is pervasive, and that's a wonderful thing.
You mentioned underground, Drum, and that water flows underground. Like there are underground rivers that have never seen the light of day. And this is where I geek out with like science and spirituality, and it all comes together and it like blows my mind. But you have underground rivers, you have underground lakes, you have aquifers, you have all of this water that exists deep, deep into the earth. That like water is a part of how our bodies disintegrate when we bury them. Like it's a part of everything. And it's creation, it's destruction. I mean, we talked about this a bit with the fire, about how it's both creative and destructive. And water is the same way, just on a much, much slower scale. But like, I don't know. I just find water amazing.
Well, and all of those things, to me, it also is a symbol of transformation. You know, there's nothing that water touches that it doesn't have an effect on in some way. And it may take a long time. You know, if you look at the creation of amazing caves that are underground and stuff, all of that is done by water, just water, you know. And you drink water, it changes your body. You water a plant, it changes the plant. I mean, everything water touches, it affects. And, you know, that transformative quality, I think, is a really important part of the well as well.
And I think it's interesting if you look at that transformative quality, in that water doesn't just transform on its own, because it's also a transportation mechanism for other things.
Mhm.
It enables transformation of other elements, of other components of the world. So if you look at stalactites and stalagmites, water creates those, right? For those who aren't familiar with those words, I'm talking about like if you go into a cave and you see the pillars that are coming down and the pillars that are coming up, they're not really pillars, they're sort of more conical. Stalagmites come from the ceiling, stalagmites come from the floor, but those are formed by water dripping onto the earth. Water that has elements and minerals in it dripping onto the earth, or dripping down from the ceiling, and the water dries and leaves the elements behind. I'm talking scientific elements here, not witchy elements. But it leaves the minerals behind, and that's what forms the stalagmites and stalactites. It's not technically water that makes those cave structures, but if it wasn't for water, they wouldn't happen.
Right. It carries the transformation. It is the transformative tool that allows those changes to happen. Because the minerals wouldn't arrive there on their own.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah, you mentioned caves. I went to some caves in southern Indiana a number of years ago, and they had you walked down to the caves, and there's water down there, and they take you into a boat, and you go out into the caves just so you can travel and see the fish and whatever. And at one point of the tour, they stopped the boat, and you could, and they turn the lights off. So you're totally in the dark, and all you hear is this, slight movement of water. And it was really a profound experience. And, it was very moving. And it was kind of like, here you are inside the earth on water in total darkness. It was a very, very profound experience. Thank you, water. Thank you, caves.
I love going into caves. I mean, which is ironic because I'm slightly claustrophobic. But put me in a cave and I'm fine as long as there's space in the cave.
Right, exactly.
I don't have to see it. I just have to know that it's there. So your comment about the sound of water, I find it really interesting. So for folks who don't know, I live up in Eastern Canada, and it's cold here. And it snowed a lot in the last few weeks, being, February in Canada. Yesterday got really warm. Okay, really warm means 42 Fahrenheit, just to be clear. But that was really warm for us here in this time of year. And we opened up all the windows and the doors and everything in the house. And it was clear blue sky outside. But you could hear the sound of the water as the snow melted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just this, for me at least, it just felt so calming. So yep, this is cool. This is good. I can hear the water. I can feel the sun, right? I've got my fire. I've got my water. Standing on the earth. Life is grand. And it was just this really kind of neat sort of, it wasn't raining, but I could hear the snow melting and I could hear the water dripping. It was this, I don't know, that sound of water dripping and of water has such calming feelings for me, evokes such calming feelings in me. I'm certain that there are other people who have gotten caught in floods and stuff that has the completely opposite effect. But for me, it's very calming.
Yeah, I run in the mornings, and we had quite a bit of snow over the last few weeks as well. And it was actually quite warm yesterday. It was in the 60s here, so about 15 Celsius or nearby. And so most of the snow is melted, but because it gets cold at night, when I was running this morning, there was still a bit of snow, but on the pathways where I was running, there were spots where the water had frozen, and so there's these crystalline structures, and it was just really beautiful. It's kind of like a different form of water that's just fascinating. So it's nice to see it everywhere.
But I wonder, all three of us live in places where it snows and it freezes. What do you folks think about that sort of, again with the transformation, again with the duality, again with the, it's not duality, again with the spectrum of snow with water is beautiful and pretty and gorgeous, and black ice and treacherous and will make you fall on your ass and hurt yourself.
No, I think it goes back to what Amber said early on in the program, and that, it's like fire. It has, benevolent properties and it has destructive properties. And that's just the way it is. It's one of the, it's part of the ironic nature of the universe, as I like to call it. It's, one thing is many things.
So let's move back to non-frozen water.
Okay, non-frozen water.
Amber's happy you were participating in the conversation. I've only had one real winter, so I still think snow is fun. Talks me in
Yay.
5 years. For water, liquid water, how do you folks use it in your practices, in your daily practices, in your bigger rituals? How do you incorporate water into what you do?
I mean, I think as I mentioned before, I use it for anointing, anointing rocks. I use it for, in some of the rituals that I do, I like to have a bowl of water that I can wash my hands as kind of a cleansing at the beginning of the rite. And I also think that we in ADF do the waters of life, which can be either spirits or water. And I like to have the ability to have both, because people in recovery or people who don't want alcohol have the opportunity to have water. And it can also be easily distributed, if not in a glass or a vessel, it can be spurged. And I think that that's one of the ways that I use it. And then I like to, whatever water is left over, as I always say, to you, Earth Mother, I return this portion of the bounty, as one day I must return to you. And so it's a chance to renew that cycle of, I got water, I used water, I give it back.
Yeah, I mean, water, like fire, can play lots of different roles, as you walk through the core order, which I think is always kind of interesting. It can be used for purification that Drum talked about. That was really, really regularly done in ancient Greece. There's entire rituals where the whole purpose was to go to the ocean to get clean before you actually went and did a big festival or something. But then we do use it as our hallows. Then we can use it as we're calling to the kindreds and the beings of occasion, and we can use it as an offering to those beings. It can actually be used as a form of divination. It can be used in the waters of life. I mean, it can be present in almost every piece of the ritual, and I think that that's really, really interesting, to see it present through so much of the ritual, or at least possibly present through so much of the ritual.
Right. I know for myself, actually inspired by Drum, my daily practice now includes anointing my tree, which is a green rock, because that works out well for me. I anoint my tree as a blessing to all of the kindreds. And so water is a huge part for me of my ritual. It's offerings, it's purifications, it's blessings, and it's the waters of life. And I actually want to dig into the waters of life for a moment here, because I know not all of our listeners and viewers are ADF members, and so they may not actually understand what we're talking about there. So what are the waters of life?
Well, I think that, in the way I look at it, there is, in many neo-pagan rites, there is a section where there is a sharing of a meal or a gift. And that's oftentimes, in some traditions, it's cakes and ale. In our tradition, it's the waters of life. But I think that there's this liquid component that's often shared. So for us, the waters of life are, we use that in some senses as when we do what we call the return flow, more watery imagery. But we may make offerings so that we may receive offerings in return. And so those offerings return to us into the waters of life. So we have a vessel with water or liquids, and we offer that up, and we ask the kindreds, our kindreds, to send their blessings into the waters. And then we distribute those waters through drinking, through asperging, through whatever means. And so through the waters, the blessings return to us. So,
and for folks who aren't familiar with ADF terminology, the kindreds is the term that we use to basically talk about all of the other spirit beings that are not human.
right.
It's our term for the ancestors, for the nature spirits, the noble ones, and the shining ones, gods and goddesses and deities. It's shorthand, it's helpful, it's useful, but it's very ADF specific.
I mean, for me, I think the fastest way to explain what the waters of life is it's the symbol of reciprocity. So throughout our ritual, we're giving offerings to all of the beings that we're inviting to take part in our ritual, and that's the opportunity for them to give gifts back to us. We don't know what they are necessarily. We can ask for things, but it's that, hey, we see you, thank you for coming. If you have gifts to give back to us, we'd love to have them. So it is that symbol of reciprocity, which is what our rituals are based around.
Right.
In that idea of the symbol of reciprocity, something that I've seen a lot, and I really like it, is some folks will take, so in ADF ritual structure, we make all of the offerings and we take an omen to listen to what the gods and the kindreds have to say to us. And then we do the waters of life. That's just the structure of our rituals. What I've been seeing more and more recently is folks sort of taking the omen as the message. They ask, what do the kindreds have to offer us today? What blessings do the kindreds have? And they'll do, like, here's what the ancestors say, here's what the nature spirits and noble ones say, here's what the shining ones say. And they will intone those omen into the waters of life. So we're asking for blessings from the kindreds. We have an expression, fathomable or non-fathomable, depending on, like, understandable or not understandable, in the omen, and then taking that and intoning that, pushing that, energetically pushing that into the water, and then sharing that with everyone. So we're all taking the blessings into ourselves. And so it is very much sort of leaning on that idea of reciprocity, of this is how we share the blessings of the kindreds among everyone in the group. Now, I find it really interesting. We've been doing a lot of online rituals lately because COVID. And what I've noticed is that as whoever is leading the ritual does the sort of blesses the water that they have, they tend to invite folks to hold their own glasses and to hold up their own waters and share that blessings by that. Sort of, you take the sound of whoever is doing the blessings and you invoke that sound into your beverage, whatever you get to choose. It's your beverage. Nobody else is drinking it. Choose what you want to drink. And I find that sort of a really nice way of being able to connect and bring everybody together through the online space.
No, I like that too. It's nice to have that common action among everybody. And since I don't think there's anything wrong with holding the waters a little higher up so that, it comes closer to the kindreds and it doesn't have to radiate quite so far.
Pretty sure that the 6 inches isn't going to make that much of a difference.
True.
Hey, when you're only 5'3", 6 inches is a long way, man.
Hey, now I'm only an inch taller than you, and not that much different. But yes.
I know that in one of the things that in RDNA, as opposed to ADF, when you do the waters of life, one of the things that you do is you do the druid sigil over the waters. So you say the waters of life, and then you do the symbol over it, which is the sigil. And that's kind of a cool thing. Also, it's kind of another energetic transference of saying, this symbol upon these waters. And I think it's a nice thing. It's a nice way to interact with the waters.
It kind of adds that blessing, right? Because like every time you do that sigil, you're adding that blessing. So folks who aren't familiar with RDNA rites, the way that the waters are shared is you have one individual who will take the water around to everyone in the space, or maybe multiple individuals, depending on how many people there are. And they make the sigil. And they say waters of life or waters of sleep, depending on the time of year. And so the sigil is you make a circle and then 2 vertical lines. And you go around the circle. And so you bless the water before every individual consumes it, and they can consume it on, all different ways. And I do want to point out here, we're talking about sharing waters and consuming waters. There are so many different ways to receive the blessings of water without actually consuming it, because depending on where you are and your situation, that may not be safe. Not be safe for you, may not be safe for other people. Depends on who you are and where you are. And so there are a lot of different ways of interacting with water, from touch, right? Just either pouring a little bit out in your hand. Like I've seen a lot of people they'll pour a little bit into their hand, and then they may anoint themselves from what's in their hand rather than drink from the cup. Or they may pour it out onto the ground if you're outside where that's safe to do. I've actually seen a bloat, which I thought was really interesting. It was done fully indoors, and they passed around the drink, of course, as is appropriate in a bloat, but they had a large vessel in the middle of the circle. And should you choose not to actually consume it for whatever reason, because it was a shared cup, so, there's a level of risk involved with that, you could pour it out into the vessel in the middle. And so there was a space to pour it on the ground that was safe for the ground. We weren't going to get yelled at by the hotel staff for doing this because it was in a hotel. And it still made it safe for everybody to participate in the blessings, which I thought was really, really cool.
That is cool. One other use of water that I think is kind of interesting is in ADF, we have a thing called the Unity Rite. And we have a series of 3 Unity cauldrons around the world. And what we do with these Unity cauldrons is we pour waters into the Unity cauldron, and then we take waters out and pour them on the ground, as kind of as what Victoria was saying. And we do that to remember and to call a unity for our solitary members, our groves and proto-groves, and our prison worship groups. The really interesting thing about what we do is, since we started doing this, we always save a portion of the waters, so that for each time we do this ritual, we carry forth the waters from the previous time. We mix it in the cauldron, and then we keep that water. So there's waters from all over the world, literally, in this cauldron. And so that's, in some ways, it is the water of memory. And the well of memory, because that cauldron, that well, does remember from time to time. And so the blessings carry forward. It's kind of cool.
And I know when we've done that right in the past, everyone, solitary and group members alike, have been invited to make a little vial of water and send it. And then that water gets mixed in with all of the water in the cauldron. Right.
And then we also offer for people to take it away with them as well. So you give a gift, you get a gift. It's kind of cool. It's that reciprocity that's so neat.
Yeah, I love the fact that, again, this goes back to the whole idea of water being so connected to everything, right? Like, it is the thing that, we're 70% water or some number like that. It's the thing that flows through everyone and everything. And it is so critical to life. You will die from thirst before you die from hunger as a human, or most animals. And it is such this connection to ourselves, to the past, because it's been here forever, to the future, because it will be here forever. Forever being a relatively long amount of time. It is just such this continuous thread through everything. Also, it defies science. Do you know that hot water freezes faster than cold water? It makes no sense. That makes no sense whatsoever. But yet it happens. It's true.
Right.
It's a popular thing in Nebraska. You boil a pot of water and then you walk outside and throw it in the air and you just watch it freeze.
I just learned about
Winter
that.
fun.
And I'm waiting for the next freeze.
It's
supposed
good.
to be like 4 degrees tonight, so I might try it.
Yeah, I think the other thing with waters too is that we consider some waters, holy or very special. Whether that water comes from, Chalice Well, or comes from Lourdes, or comes from wherever it may come from. These are holy waters, or little wells in Brittany, or wherever it could be. So these are, those waters are also things that we're attracted to because we feel that they have presence and power and holiness and blessing. And for places like Kildare, it's nice that people of very different backgrounds and faiths can come and share the waters there and come away with something holy in their own right.
Indeed.
And I think that, that's not a new concept. You can see that in ancient mythology. If you look at the myths that are tied to the Well of Wisdom, or if you look at, the 9 rivers of the underworld and the different powers that each of them held, or the rituals where people would march miles to go to the ocean to connect with that water source. They understood the power of water even then. And, I think that it's just one more way for us to connect with those ancient people and bring their practices forward.
So I think that brings us to the end of this part of the episode. We will continue chatting about wells and water and where we see that in myth and what that means to us in the next episode. For now, however, we will go ahead and give you a divination for the next few weeks, and then we will return with more talk about water. And Drum, I believe you're going to try a new oracle this week for folks.
Yes, I am. I'm going to try the Greek alphabet oracle. I've been studying the Greek alphabet oracle as part of some of the workings I'm doing, and I've been under the tutelage of Amber, who's a wealth of information on this subject. So
there's no pressure at all.
I hope I do it justice.
I'm sure it'll be lovely.
Okay, let me draw 3 tiles. Okay, the first tile is Omega. Omega speaks of a difficult harvest season and withered shoots and starvation, untimely endings. So this is tough times is what this is suggests. You agree with that, Amber? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I thought. The next tile is Lambda. And Lambda says that this is a blessing in disguise. So while we see with Omega that there are challenging times that face us, in some ways this is a blessing in disguise. And that as we move through these challenging times, that things will get better. And our final tile is Alpha, which basically says that everything is going to be okay. This is a time of new beginnings. So from endings, we find that in the final analysis, we're moving to a better place, and we're moving to a better situation. So tough times bring better times ahead. Thank you all for joining us this week. We look forward to speaking with you again in a couple of weeks. Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for today's video. If you like this episode, be sure to like and subscribe. You can also find more episodes on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast providers. You can find us on social media on Facebook and Twitter, or for more information, visit our website, triskelepodcast.weebly.com.